Hey, it's Drybear. I'm finishing up my second playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, which means it's time to post my next full build guide. This time we'll be talking about my Infiltrator build that focuses on hand crossbows, sneak attacks, and tons of stealth and sleight of hand. This build is incredibly busted. You can take out several targets before combat even begins, and you constantly reset your own visibility to the enemy, which means you almost never get hit. I've also been playing this build on Tactician as well, and it's been doing exceedingly well. Additionally, I have made more notes in my second playthrough than I made in my first, which means that I have now a full gear progression for your character alongside a full character progression for levels, stats, abilities, and so on. So let's dive into the Baldur's Gate 3 Infiltrator build guide. But first, you should come hang out with me on live stream. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/Drybear. We'll be starting our third playthrough pretty soon here. If you do come hang out with me in the community on Twitch, then the next time you go to pop your neck or your shoulder, you're gonna get one of those really rare, super satisfying pops where everything in your body just relaxes. So I've improved my format since the last build guide, going over all of the specifics of the class itself. These images will be uploaded and shared for you in the description down below, in the comments, and also as a command on my live stream if you're looking for more of those. But this is going to be the character progression, and I also have a full gear progression through all of the acts in the game, of what items are going to be useful for this build, where to find them, and why they're good. Now, this complete build is going to be Rogue 3, Ranger 5, and Fighter 4. When I first talked about my Infiltrator build going into the launch of Baldur's Gate 3 after early access testing, I actually suggested that you would go Rogue with Assassin subclass and actually push Ranger up to 7. But after playing the full game on Tactician difficulty with all of these things here, there's some changes that I would make to this build to make it even stronger. First, I would actually run Rogue subclass Thief instead of Rogue subclass Assassin. The main reason is that Thief gets a second bonus action that they can use, and since we're using 2 hand crossbows, an extra bonus action means you can shoot your offhand an extra time. It also means that you can use another cunning action to hide in combat and get your stealth check and get your advantage on shot as well. And I actually think that taking Fighter all the way up to 4 for the feat is going to be more useful than putting more points into Rogue or Ranger once you finally get to the end. Plus, it is nice to get Fighter up to 3 for the subclass champion because it does improve your critical hits. I also messed around with starting class Fighter, starting class Ranger, and starting class Rogue, and I think the best option for this is going to be starting class Rogue. You are going to delay your extra attack from Ranger to a couple more levels than level 5, which I think is okay since you're going to get the subclass Thief with extra bonus attack on your offhand weapon. Rogue also starts with sleight of hand, which is super useful in the opening levels of the game, being able to unlock things, pick lock doors, and sneak around a lot easier. It's going to make the dialogue options easier if you're using this character for dialogue as well. And Rogue starts with all the weapon proficiencies you need, including hand crossbows, that will allow you to use this build right off the jump. For starting stats, you want to get Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom as your primary. And I think in character creation, it's fine to just do 17 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, and 14 Wisdom. And then throughout the game, you just want to get 1 to 3 more Dexterity to get that all the way up. But the Constitution and Wisdom are going to help you out quite a bit. If you wanted to, I usually don't give builds that have any negatives for stats, but in general, you can put Strength and Intelligence at 8 and put extra points into Wisdom and Constitution, or even, maybe even Charisma, just for the dialogue options if you are going to use this character for dialogue. And for races and sub-races, you can pick whatever you want. I think there's definitely some cool synergies with Drow specifically, or even Wood Elves for their bonuses. But in general, you can play whatever you want with this build and it's going to work just fine. Another suggestion that I would make is I would actually suggest that you play Dark Urge for this playthrough. Not only is it cool to be a assassin that's dealing with the idea of murder and having urges to give murder, but there is also a very specific Dark Urge item that makes this build even stronger. Now, I'm here in my camp on my playthrough right now, facing away from everything so you can just see what's in the camp. I'm trying to avoid spoilers for everybody, but I do want to highlight the Dark Urge item that comes with this. As minimal spoilers as I can for Dark Urge, this is something that they explain in character creation about Dark Urge. The Dark Urge is an origin style that is applied to any character. When you select Dark Urge as origin, you can pick any class you want, you can pick any race you want, and you can play however you want. Your character just starts with this urge to kill, and you don't know why. And throughout the story, you'll have unique dialogue options, unique cutscenes, and unique interactions that no other playthrough will have because you selected Dark Urge. And the non-spoiler version is Throughout your story, you will be given options to give in to the urge or to resist the urge. And by the way, you can play a good version of the Dark Urge playthrough. You can play an evil version, and you can play something in the middle that's more conflicted. So don't worry, if you play Dark Urge, it doesn't mean you have to be evil. You can actually play a full, good, virtuous Dark Urge playthrough. I confirmed this myself on this playthrough here. So you can definitely do that if you are looking for it. However, there is an item that you get for giving into your Dark Urge early on in the game that is incredibly good for this build, and that is going to be this cloak, the Deathstalker Mantle. You are given this if you give into your urges early in Act 1 in various ways. This just means give into your urge, however you want to accomplish that early, and you will be given this item from a character that appears and talks to you. What's great about this cloak, though, is you don't get that many cloaks in Act 1, so it's nice to pick this up early. But the passive on this is the shadow itself. Once per turn, when you kill an enemy, shroud yourself in primeval darkness to become invisible for two turns. This has no cooldown, no internal cooldown. Every time you kill an enemy on your turn, you will instantly go invisible, be untargetable, you'll get advantage on your next shot. And so if you're playing Infiltrator, where you rely on that advantage bonus in combat, and you're constantly getting kills with crazy damage, it makes this build just go to the moon. Is incredibly, incredibly powerful. For the progression here, we're starting with Rogue. You're gonna get Sleight of Hand, Stealth, and I recommend Acrobatics and Deception, but you can pick whatever you want. For Rogue level 2, when you level up, you'll get your Cunning actions. This puts a lot of the utility actions like Disengage or Dash or Hide that are normally in action, and gives you an option to use them as a bonus action, which we're gonna have 2 options for, because we're going to run with Thief. At level 3, take Rogue to level 3 and pick subclass Thief to get that extra bonus action. And then at level 4, we're going to pick up Ranger 1. You can actually pick any favorite enemy that you want here. That I don't think it really matters all that much. You can add in some extra heavy armor if you wanted, but I wouldn't recommend it because you'll miss on stealth skill checks. Any of these I think are fine. You can probably go for Magebreaker if you want to get True Strike on there. And then for the extra passive, I would actually recommend, after playing through this the full way through, Wasteland Wanderer Poison. You can get fire here. You're going to take a lot of fire damage in the early stages of the game. The reason I recommend Wasteland Wanderer Poison for poison resistance is because, unlike fire, where you just take damage, if you become poisoned, it applies disadvantage to your attacks, and you don't want that. You want as high as possible rolls, because we're going to be taking a lot of hits on our rolls for attacks to make them deal more damage. So if you get disadvantage on your attacks, you're going to be missing a lot more. So I like Wasteland Wanderer Poison. And then for skills, I recommend picking up Athletics. For level 5, get Ranger level 2. And for this, we want to pick up Fighting Style Archery. And then for the spells, I like getting Ensnaring Shot and Fog Cloud to obscure ourselves and to put disadvantage on targets as well. For Ranger 3, we pick up the subclass Gloomstalker, and this is when the build just flies off the handle, becomes incredibly strong, because you have all the bonus passives from Rogue, all the bonus passives from Ranger, and now you have Gloomstalker, which means you get an extra attack on your first turn of the encounter, which means you can attack. You can attack basically 4 times with your hand crossbows, and you can attack again with your Gloomstalker Initiate, and you get extra bonuses for starting the fight as well. And you can basically take out anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 enemies with this combination at the start of the round, which is absolutely insane. Or you can focus all your attacks on a big beefy target and burn down their HP before they even get to play the game. And on top of this, you're also going to have other bonuses, like if you decide to go Dark Urge and get the cloak, every time you kill an enemy, you'll re-stealth, get bonus extra advantage, things like that. For the spell, it doesn't matter too much. I like getting Enhanced Leap so we can always get to really nice spots to hide from enemies and things like that. For Ranger 4 at level 7, keep pushing Ranger and pick up the feat Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter is a super huge bonus here for feat, and it does a lot of things that I think people need to be aware of on how to actually use it. So when you have Sharpshooter selected as a feat, when you go to your passives down here at the bottom, you will have this as a toggleable option. What Sharpshooter does primarily is that it will make it so your character will no longer have to worry about high ground, low ground. Even if you're below a target and they're way above you, you won't have advantage or disadvantage. It doesn't matter. You will always be able to shoot enemies regardless of elevation, which makes your hand crossbow build very strong. But there's also a passive toggle here with Sharpshooter all in. And you want to know about this because when you activate the feat, this will be on by default. What this does is it gives you a negative in your chance to hit, but when you do hit, it does an additional 10 damage. So you're less accurate with your shots, but when they land, they do a boatload more damage. And by the way, this is for each weapon shot as well. So when you're doing the hand crossbow shots that do the extra shot, you'll be able to do tons of extra bonus damage with this. Now, we make up for the loss in the accuracy that we have with this debuff here by gaining advantage in the combat, either by being stealth, being invisible, or having advantage on target for various other reasons. That's why the stealth and the invisibility is so useful, is because you can offset the negative of accuracy with sharpshooter all in, and you can just leave this on and do insane amounts of damage. However, I would make sure that you're aware of this, is because when you run into targets that have exceptionally high armor class, if they have armor class like 20 to 30, insanely high armor class, you're going to want to probably toggle this off, just because you're going to have such a low hit chance on them already. And when you keep this on, it's just not worth it. You're never going to hit them. So in that case, when you face high AC targets, just go to passives, turn off sharpshooter just by clicking it. You make sure you get your accuracy back, and then when you're going back to normal targets, remember to come back and turn this back on so you get that extra bonus damage. Then we take Ranger to level 5, and this gives us extra attack. So not only do we get 2 bonus actions, which we can shoot with our offhand, or we can stealth, or we can misty step, we're now also going to be able to shoot twice with our main hand every time we take an action, which is even more insane. So we can start the fight with our Dreadstalker initiation, our sneak attack, then we can shoot, and then we can extra attack on each one of those attacks. We can bonus attack with our offhand. So we're attacking anywhere from 4 to 8 times at the beginning of combat, depending on how we set things up, which means you're just firing away like firing squad, just shooting them down before they even get to react or do anything to you. For level 9, we're going to go into fighter, and we're going to take this all the way to level 12. And around level 9 and 10 is where you start to solidify the build, and the last few choices don't matter as much. But just to make sure that you're perfectly rounded out, this is what you're going to want to do for the last bit. Take fighter level 1 and get fighting style defense. It's kind of the best choice here. You already have archery, so you don't need to get another fighting style archery. It's not going to do anything for you. Defense is a great option. You can run with other options here, but I think this is the best one. Then at level 10, get action surge on fighter level 2, which is a short rest, doesn't take an action. When you use action surge, it allows you to take another action that turn, which means that you can shoot, offhand shoot, shoot, offhand shoot, Dreadstalker attack, sneak attack, action surge, shoot, and then extra attack, shoot again. So you can shoot again anywhere from 4 to like 9 or 10 times before any enemies even get a turn, which, by the way, you have your Gloomstalker bonuses for doing bonus damage to targets that haven't taken a turn yet. So you have all these crazy, insane assassination options. For Fighter 3 at level 11, I like getting Subclass Champion for the improved crit. You can also go Battlemaster if you want the extra die rolls and the improvements from it, but I think the improved crit just works so perfectly for this build for doing bonus damage. And then by the time you hit level 12, you're at the very end of the game. You'll be able to select whatever you want here. You'll get a feat, you can get defense, you can get a feat tough, or if you don't have gear that gives you the stats that you want, you can just take the ability score adjustment. Let's do a quick demo of all this just so people are aware. I've gone to the corner of the map facing away from the map so you don't see anything you're not supposed to, and I'm just going to shoot at my companions here so that you can see what's going on here. So when you have the passive Sharpshooter All In, you'll notice that you have by default a pretty low chance to hit. Sharpshooter All In has a negative effect there. But if you can manage to get into stealth, which you want to use your cunning action for this in general, so if you can go into stealth, you'll get the advantage on that. It's going to increase your chance to hit significantly. So that's really where the synergy comes in, is you're able to go into hiding or go into stealth, especially if you are going to do the Dark Urge version by getting the Deathstalker Mantle. Every time you get a kill, you will be able to reset that, go back into stealth, and get that advantage back again, which is super useful. Also, doing your sneak attack gives you a huge bonus in damage output at the very start of the round, and you can even get some extra bonus on that with other things like different potions and elixirs and things like that, which can be super useful. Then you'll notice because of Thief, we have 2 bonus actions that we can use, and you have an action here. Keep in mind, if you're using dual hand crossbows, which I recommend you do with this build, it is on by default to automatically fire your offhand if you just fire your main hand. So you see here we have offhand attack and ranged attack. If I use my ranged attack first, it's going to fire both weapons by default. If you want to skip that, like if a target's at like 2 health or something, just go ahead and target the offhand ranged weapon ability. fire that off first, and then use your extra range attack on someone else. And then when you have Ranger 5, you can do bonus attacks on that as well, which is super, super easy. Now, you will run into enemies that are resistant or immune to piercing, which does kind of slow this build down. And so I found a way to work around that completely. And that is with these two specific hand crossbows, which I'll tell you where to get them at the end of the video here. There's going to be the Hellfire hand crossbow, which unlocks Scorching Ray Shot and has a chance to give us some bonus damage on that. Plus the Never Misser, which is base force damage instead of pierce damage, and grants you Magic Missile, which is a spell that can't miss, by the way. It will always hit the target. It may do 0 damage, but it will always strike the target if you shoot the shot, and it can go around corners as well, which makes this build super, super flexible. Take full advantage of Misty Step. You can get this unlocked for your character in many different ways. You can actually see here that I actually have 3 different uses of Misty Step that I can use in combat based on gear, selections, races, things like that. So like each one of these consumes a different charge of, like this one is just a spell slot, level 2 spell slot. This one is a short rest, and this is a different short rest. So I can blink around as much as I want. I can get high, I can get low. And we know that Misty Step doesn't trigger opportunity attack as well. So if you're standing right in front of a target and you're about to get attacked, you can Misty Step anywhere you want. As long as your character doesn't move, you can get out of that distance and get some easy options there. You can also utilize True Strike if you do go for the Mage Breaker favored enemy. This is a way to get advantage on your next roll, and you can use this out of combat, by the way. Now we're going to talk about gear and gear drops. I'm going to tell you what gear is going to be best for this build and where to find it and how to get it. So if you're looking for the no spoiler version, I'm going to go through this in chronological order. We'll start with Act 1, we'll go through Act 2, and we'll go through the final act of the game, which is Act 3. And so if you want to just discover everything yourself, you can certainly tune out now and go play the game. But if you want to know what items are very good, some of them you have to know exactly how to get them, otherwise you will miss them entirely, and they're very strong for this build. I can tell you where they are. I've taken out all of the images. This is just going to be a text sheet, just like my character progression, so you know what the name of the item is and generally where to get it and what it does. But it's not going to be like, hey, this is what happens in the story, whatever. It's just, this is where you get the item that you need for this build to make it super strong. If you are someone who is tuning out, before you go, I want to make sure that you know that there are some very specific ways to get hand crossbows in Act 1. Hand crossbows are one of the rarest weapons in the game, and if you don't know where to get them, you will spend the entire playthrough without seeing a single hand crossbow. You're wondering, Drybear, why are you telling me to use hand crossbows when they don't exist? They certainly do. And so for the people that are tuning out just for the anti-spoiler version, they don't want to know where items are, they just want to explore and have fun, there are a few very easy ways to get hand crossbows in the beginning of the game. The first and easiest way is going to be going to the knolls. In the knolls in the north side of the map in Act 1, all of them have a chance to drop a hand crossbow. So if you want to get that hand crossbow fast, just go straight north, go do all the knolls, kill all of the knolls and the hyenas, and you should have about 3 or 4 hand crossbows that you can use and just equip. Clip one in your main hand, equip one in your offhand. If you started as a rogue class, you'll have proficiencies in hand crossbows. You'll dual wield them right off the bat, and you'll be good to go. After that, after the knolls in Act 1, you can get hand crossbows from one of the vendors in the Myconid colony in the Underdark. And then further on from that, when you go to Grimforge, there's a bunch of hand crossbows on the upper levels of Grimforge laying around in chests and up against walls. So those are the 3 best ways to get hand crossbows at the very beginning of the game. So if you're tuning out because you don't want to know where the rest of the items are, good to see you. Thanks for hanging out. We're going to go through the gear progression for this build starting now. All right, let's dive into it. So this is just a text thing. So people that want to avoid spoilers, some of these items you can only get for specific actions in the story, and some of them are incredibly powerful for this build specifically. So let's go through them in chronological order. For Act 1, what you want to do is you want to start with a rapier. This is going to be your best finesse weapon for your melee attacks and for your sneak attacks. Super useful. And then when you get into the Underdark, at the very entrance of the Underdark, there is a blue longsword that you can get called Falar Aluv, and you have to pass the sword in the stone skill check to pull it out of the stone. It's at the very, like right as you come into the Underdark, it's right up there at the front. So pick that up, and it's going to be super useful for you. And you'll use this probably for the majority of Act 1 for your melee weapon when you do have to use melee. Next, for Grimforge, you do actually want to get the Firestoker hand crossbow. This one will give you the Scorching Ray ability. It will also give you extra bonus damage, and it'll give you extra piercing to targets that are burning as well. To get the Firestoker, you have to go to Grimforge and go all the way up to the catwalk near the actual forge itself. Jump over to the other side, and you'll fight some Hellboars In there, you will find the fire stoker for your hand crossbow. And then when it comes to the hand crossbow, the box near the Dark Justiciar corpses does have hand crossbows on it. You can also get them from Knowles in the North Starting Zone, and you can buy them from Dareth Bonecloak, which is the mushroom vendor in the Myconid Colony in the Underdark as well. For armor, there's two big options that you want to make sure you get before you leave Act 1. And then it's going to be the Drow studded leather armor, which you can get in the Underdark. When you enter the Underdark and turn left, you'll fight the Spectator, which is the Beholder. Next to them, you'll find Drow studded leather armor in the chest or off the body of any of the Drows that are there. And this gives you bonus to stealth checks, which is super useful. If you don't want this item, you can also just go steal Minthara's armor in the Goblin stronghold, the Shattered Sanctum. Just go in there and kill her or steal it from her, and you'll be able to get that. Her armor is just as good. It does have the stealth bonus on it as well. For boots in Grimforge, make sure you don't miss this because these are insanely, insanely good. So Disintegrating Nightwalkers, the boots that come off of Nier. You have to kill him, or either kill him by fighting him, or let him die inside the poison gas in Grimforge, and off from his body we'll get the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. These are insanely strong boots. They make it so you can't be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and you can't slip on grease or ice, and primarily it gives you Misty Step, which means you can always blink away, create distance, shoot, go stealth, reset. It's super good. You want these for the rest of your playthrough. So make sure that Nier dies either by killing him yourself or by waiting too long and letting him die in the poison inside of the forge. For amulet, there isn't anything super good. There is a Misty Step amulet in Act 1 that you can pick up, which is pretty nice. But in general, just use whatever it is that you find. For rings, Guiding Light is super useful in the Arcane Tower. This will just give you the ability to cast light, which is useful for Act 2. So you want to make sure that at least one of your characters has this ring for Act 2. And then for the second ring, the Fetish of the Calardurian Smooth Hands in the Underdark is super, super good. This one will give you invisibility as an option, and the only way, as far as I know, to get this ring is you have to go to Grimforge, turn left from the docks, and go down to where they're punting gnome bodies into the water, and then when you're down there, you'll be given the option to pass a skill check on the corpse. Like, there's a dialogue option to look at a corpse and see what they're like, if there's any loot there that they're missing. You have to pass that skill check, and if you do, the Fetish of the Calardurian Smooth Hands becomes available. You'll be able to pick it up and keep it, and that's going to be a big option for you. When it comes to Act 2, or basically the end of Act 1, I should say, is you want to go to the Githyanki Creche. The Quartermaster vendor inside the Githyanki Creche in the Mountain Pass will be able to sell you the Knife of the Undermountain's King, which gives you a whole bunch of advantage on targets that are obscured, which is really nice. Super bonus damage. It's really good for melee, so you want to keep that as well. The Never Misser is the blue force-focused hand crossbow that gives you a lot of really good options. It's found in the Moonrise Towers from the vendor Roa Moonglow. You have to basically get into Moonrise Towers to buy from this vendor. You can do this with disguise. You can do this by pretending to be part of the Absolute. You can do this by following in the Dryder all the way in and then spending at the vendor or whatever. There's plenty of ways to do this. You want to get in and buy it from the vendor because this one is insanely good. It does force damage instead of piercing damage, which gives you another damage type, and it grants you Magic Missile, which is a 100% accuracy spell, which helps you if a target is they're resistant or immune to piercing, which helps you in a lot of ways. The next hand crossbow is one of the best hand crossbows in the entire game. It is ridiculously good, and you want to make sure that you get it, which is the Hellfire hand crossbow, a very rare hand crossbow that you find in the Temple of Shar by killing Yurgir the Devil. So he's actually at the very bottom of the Temple of Shar. You have to kill him to get it. He's a pretty tough kill, but when you do kill him, he gives you his hand crossbow, which has piercing, weapon enhancement 2. It also has a chance to inflict burning when you're hitting a target with this weapon while you're hiding or invisible, and it gives you Scorching Ray Shot, which gives you fire damage, which is really nice as well. From the Act 2 Last Light Inn, there's going to be a option to pick up 2 pieces of armor from the Quartermaster. Keep in mind that if you don't go to Last Light Inn and you don't do that progress, if you meet the Quartermaster later, I don't think she drops either of these items from her if she dies. I think you have to go to Last Light Inn in order to buy from her to get these. But the Cloak of Protection that she sells gives armor class +1 and saving throws +1, which is generally good for everyone and good for someone who doesn't want to be shot at ever. Shade Clinger Armor is a very nice bonus. It gives you advantage on saving throws while you're obscured and gives you stealth +1. Another great option. You can still keep using the Drow armor if you want, and you can still keep using the Minthara armor if you want as well. And then the Gloves of Dexterity from the Githyanki Kresh Quartermaster is also really good. It sets your Dexterity to 18, which if you're still at 17 at this point, it's a nice little rounded number to give you that extra bonus, and it gives you an extra attack roll, an attack +1, which is pretty useful as well. For Amulet, the Periapt of Wound Closure is nice in the Mountain Pass. The lady on the very edge that has her little camp there next to the Kresh, Lady Esther, she'll sell the Periapt of Wound Closure. This is a amulet that when you're downed, you automatically stabilize at the end of the turn, and you maximize the number of hit points restored from healing effects, which is super nice for your character or really any character. In the Moonrise Towers, you can also get from Araj Oblodra, the Risky Ring. This one is a fun one to play with. This makes so you gain advantage on all attack rolls and disadvantage on all saving throws, which means you get super nice advantage on everything that you do, but you can get CC'd and hit by effects a lot more often, which if you're stealth or invisible most of the time, it should be fine, but it is an option to play through. It makes the playthrough a lot more thrilling, I think, when you play with this ring. And then the Ring of Twilight comes from it's a tower in the Shadowlands that's kind of broken and shattered. It has a trap at the entrance. Inside of that is going to be the Ring of Twilight, and you gain bonus armor class while you're obscured, which makes you even tankier, which is really nice as well. Moving on into Act 3, there's not as many crazy options here that you would get for other builds. Other builds have a lot of legendaries and other things that you can get in Act 3 to really beef up the build, but for this one, it's not too crazy. In the refugee camp, which is the first camp that you get into, one of the weapon vendors, the Ex-Vic-Yap, he sells an ambusher, which is a melee weapon, which will give you a bonus to initiative rolls and advantage on perception, which is pretty nice. And in combat, you deal an additional necrotic damage against creatures that haven't taken a turn yet, which is going to be most of the time when you're playing this build. If you decide to kill Orin in Act 3 as well, you'll get the Bloodthirst weapon, which is very good. It gives you another roll on improved critical. It gives you True Strike. If you're using it in the main hand, you can do vulnerable to piercing damage as well. So you can hit the target with your melee and then shoot it with your crossbows. Super nice, super sweet. There is also a crazy good legendary bow that you can switch to at this point in the story. The Gantra Mail. You have to go into the Steel Watch Foundry, kill the Steel Watcher Titan, and when you do, you'll get the legendary bow. And you can switch to bows here. I think this build is still best played with hand crossbows, but if you want to play with the Gantra Mail, you can as well. In the Murder Tribunal, you can pick up the Saravok's Horned Helmet. This one will give you advantage on, it gives you another critical hit. It gives you the critical hit bonus as well. So you can stack up all these in different slots. You can't be frightened, and you have Constitution saving throws +1. You can also get from the refugee camp, Ex-Vic-Yap, you can get the Stalker Gloves. It means that you get bonus on initiative rolls, and your sneak attack deals an additional force damage, and this works for both as well. And then in Wormrock's Fortress, at the end behind Gortash, you can also pick up the Helldusk Boots. This makes it so that you cannot be forcibly moved by foes, spells, or actions, and you ignore the effects of difficult terrain. And you also, when you fail a saving throw, you may use your reaction to succeed instead, which works great with the Risky Ring when you're going to be failing those saving throws constantly. And you also will have the ability to use Hellcrawler, which means you can teleport to an area and deal fire damage in an area when you land. So you combine this with all your extra Misty Steps and all your extra teleports and stealths, plus the ability to do fire damage when you land, which bonuses on your hand crossbow if you're using the Fire Stoker, which is really nice as well. So you have all those bonuses there, and then you also can't be slowed down by difficult terrain. You can't be knocked back for any reason. You can't be displaced for any reason. All that puts it really well together. So hopefully that was as little spoilery as possible. It's kind of hard to go over gear like that without being too spoilery, but hopefully the spoiler warning was enough for you on that specifics there. And that is the Infiltrator build. This thing is super insanely busted. If you like playing rogue stealth, or you like hand crossbows, or that kind of like demon hunter, devil hunter style play, this is exactly the build for you. So if you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.